Okay, so welcome everybody to Webclass Wednesday. Always great to have everybody live in the room. And if you're here live, welcome. If you're watching the recording, the replay, welcome. We hope there's some value here that you can take with you. If you have any questions, you know you can always reach me. So tonight, Author Spotlight Success Series is for editing, but more particularly, I want to introduce you to Shari Reinhart and what she brings to the world of publishing. So I'm just going to read a couple of words that so make you a little bit more familiar, and then Shari can say hello. So when Oprah chose her to read from her personal journals on a post 9/11 November 2001 Oprah Winfrey show about gratitude, that was all the validation Shari needed to start her freelance writing career. Reading, writing, journaling, and imagining outside the box of her traditional upbringing, Shari was born to work her way to a higher state of being in connection with like-minded people. Today, Shari works with aspiring and accomplished authors to put their experience, expertise, and excellence out into the world. She does so by infusing all their knowledge with the heart, soul, and sometimes vulnerability that people are eager to read these days. Her pet peeve, also my pet peeve, when people say, hey, I need an editor. Anyone know someone? You never just hire an editor without understanding exactly what editors do. And in my line of work, I know that most people don't understand actually what the role is of an editor in your pathway to publishing. So Shari says editing is a very broad category. And I say it's not just anyone that you want to entrust your gift with to take it to the next level, which is taking it from your head onto the paper and out to the world. That piece in the middle is probably it is as important as writing the book, finessing the book, and making sure that your voice is exactly what you want to bring. And Shari's the one in the middle that helps make that happen for you. So tonight, Shari will share her professional insight to help you determine what you need from an editor. We'll discuss the different levels of editing, the editing process, and how to determine what you need when you're transforming your book from your head to your paper, and the most important next phase of editing and quality refinement before your book is shared with the world. Shari loves questions, so please be prepared to ask whatever questions you'd like. So Shari joins us from the West Island. Welcome, Shari. Say hello to
everybody. Hello.
Hi.
So take me back a while when the Oprah experience really opened you up to wanting to write and whatnot. But like, when did you know you were destined to write a book? So you wrote your first book. When did you publish that first book?
Oh, that first book was published, I believe it was 2012 or 2013. It is the only book I wrote so far because I have been gratefully employed most of my time. So the second book that I really want to write will have to wait.
Right.
So I was a stay-at-home mom for a little too long because I was starting to really lose my mind. And Richard may not know about that. I'm not sure, but if any of the other ladies here are moms, they'll know what I mean when you kind of get lost in the kids and the house and the laundry. So I started journaling online through a back office that Oprah had on her website. And she picked up one of my journals post 9/11, and that was literally her words, And I took that as a sign that I should just go back to my childhood favorite thing to do. Like Carolyn told you, reading, writing, journaling, that's like a huge part of my life, even before I started to do it professionally. And I went back to those roots, and I just built a career based on the fact that, well, if Oprah picked me, that's exactly what I said. Well, if Oprah picked me, then I must have something to offer.
Well, it's a great belief to have because, in the end, whatever inspires us to move toward what we're called to do, sometimes we're not aware of it. Sometimes we're being called to write and we're just ignoring the call, but yours was pretty clear.
It was a kick in the ass. It really was. It totally took me out of really, I wasn't in a great place after being home for as many years as I was with my kids. I wasn't doing them much good, and I was certainly losing myself in all of that. So yeah, I needed the kick, and that's what did it for me.
So before, I mean, we would touch on the writing in a second, but you also created something of a community before you were pulling people together as an author community. Tell us a little bit about the group that you started to really get yourself back into a networking environment with other women, and for them then to, you know, share about their life experiences and whatnot. Tell us about that group.
Well, you know, the kick in the butt that made me decide, okay, now I know what I want to do. I'm going to recreate my life. I'll still be a full-time mom, but I'm going to start slowly to build this freelance writing business for myself. But who was going to buy my work?
Right.
Well, then I thought, well, I do 7 a.m. carpools and I do 3:30 afternoon pickups and et cetera, the life of a full-time mom. I said, well, I need to network. And honestly, the BNI model didn't fit a working mother. I'm going back 12 years. It did not fit a working mother. All their hours, all their commitments, everything that you had to do to belong to that group was actually the opposite that I built for MIB. So I created a network of women like myself.
So tell us what MIB is, for those who don't.
Sorry. Well, it started off as Moms in Business, literally another woman and myself in the schoolyard where our kids went to school. She was doing crafts. I was doing my writing. Everyone was selling Tupperware and what have you. And none of us knew what anyone else was doing. So I called a meeting in my house. 27 women showed up. And I said, don't you think we should start letting people know that we have things besides our children to keep us excited and going, and we can have businesses here. So that's how it started. That was our first meeting. Then I took $50 from everyone for a whole year of meetings, and I threw myself into that, and I built a huge, a perfect community of like-minded women who were hiding all their gifts and talents, just kind of doing their pastimes as a pastime, but really wanting to make something of it. And so I ran those networking meetings for 12 years. MIB was Moms in Business. Then a non-mom came in and said, you have to change the name. So in 2 seconds flat, I said, motivate, inspire, believe. And that's just what it became. And I just passed the torch last year. So I did that for 12 years. And now there's another woman running that group.
So when you decided this, that's fabulous. And I know there's so many women. I know many of those women who were part of MIB and that have gone on to, you know, their businesses have flourished. And what a great community to really kind of pull people together to feel that security of, hey, we're all kind of in this together and we all have our individual pastimes and hobbies, and who's going to create businesses, which you did create your business
which I did.
From that.
Many of us did. With the help of each other.
Exactly. So that's a lot of the philosophy behind what I do with Pathways, is to try to bring people together to, you know, so that they have that security of knowing that they're not alone. And, you know, when this happens, it's not just to you, because what happens a lot of the time is people just stop the process when they feel like they're all alone out there putting this book together, and then they actually don't get to the goal. And that's my desire for them, is that they get to the goal, so that I've got this team of people that shepherds them, including you and Steve Walters, who's on the line right now, my graphic designer, Steve Walters, Chap Steve, as we lovingly call him. My team that are, you know, also dedicated to getting that book out, a quality book of excellence, because in the self-publishing, or what I call the independent publishing world, there's a lot of misinformation out there. You know, you're seeing a real lack of quality in a lot of circles. Why? Because people they're not giving their book the respect that it deserves. I mean, think about it. You're going to create this piece of art that comes to you, through you, out of you, onto page. You're going to give this wonderful piece of art to the world, but you're not going to package it or refine it well enough for it to be respected when it's released. So that means you try to cut corners where you can, and it doesn't have to be a monumental investment, but when you create a book, it's a project, it's a business, it's a product. So there's naturally going to be an investment in it. So what I hear most often, and I think Shari can agree, people will say,
Sorry, guys.
What's that? Sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, but what'll happen is that people will say, okay, well, I got this book and I got to find an editor, and what's the cheapest way for me to do it? What's the quickest way for me to do it? I can just get somebody in my family to read it through, therefore it's edited. So Shari, when did you first decide that this, this really important piece was something you needed to address?
It all started to come together with me, quite frankly, when I worked with a business coach, and he pulled those pieces out of me. He says, you don't want, because I was doing website and marketing material and marketing collateral and, bios and CVs and speeches, etc. And I wasn't really feeling like I was contributing enough of myself to those pieces. And I realized, with heavy pieces of work, like blog posts that are very important to you that might go up on HuffPo or Inc.com or what have you, and books, there's so much that I can infuse as an objective party to that product, because I'm not attached. So when I get to know an author, I get to spend a little time with an author. I sense what they're really trying to say, and I try to pull out those parts that might be hidden, that might, that objective part that really adds that extra layer to the writing. So it's not preachy, it's not, it has the heart. And basically that's what my business coach infused me with, this understanding that I don't just write to write. I add the essence. So that's my favorite thing to do with authors, really, is to help pull out the best parts of them using their voice and helping them see what they might have missed in sharing more deeply. It's the depth and the quality of that work. So, but I do want to say something. You were talking about how it's important to invest in editing. I think the first most important thing that an author needs to know is that they're very close to their work. I mean, face it, their work comes from here, either here or from here to the heart onto the laptop. And that's like really close. That's like giving birth to a baby. Literally, it comes through you. So it's really hard to be objective about what you're writing. So if for nothing else, always get a second pair of eyes on your content. I do always. I
do too.
Or I give it many days and I just keep going back to it, because we're just too close to our own work. So that's like number one, is just know that even the most celebrated authors have editors. No first draft is ever good enough. It's just not.
Well, and and to you it is like, so the process that I use, of course, with you and with any editors that I've had and that I've used, that there's a human connection that's really, really important, because I'm so aware of that one thing where this is mine, it's part of me, and it's a challenge to let it go to somebody else who's going to. So what I try to do is bridge the gap with you, and how we work with clients is we get you to have a conversation with that client, and the first thing we want them to know is that we're not here to be one of those people, and they're out there, who really thrive on cutting your work to pieces, because it's part of their insecurity as a writer to be able to, and I fired an editor once for that. right? Like, there's one thing about making it and improving it and finessing it and fine tuning it. It's another thing to chop it up. And if, for example, I have received a manuscript that really is not in the shape that it needs to be to go to you, well, then we go back to the writer, okay? And then we work on that before it comes to editing. I mean, ghostwriting is something else, completely architecting it. We'll cover that in a minute, like the different stages of editing, from the most comprehensive to the most finite.
Right.
But really what we want the author and the editor to do is work as a team together. So the editor's not here to cut up your idea and to throw out things that are really important to you. Her job is to work with you.
So here's, if I may, because I will forget what I want to say. So to that point, and part of really my mission and values and the integrity of the contribution that I want to make to people who have something really important to say and they want to share it with the world. Listen, like Carolyn keeps talking about, book projects are called projects because they're not something you do overnight. They take a lot of work, a lot of intention, a lot of dedication, a lot of sitting your butt in the chair, a lot of stuff that many people are not used to doing. So when I am invited into someone's work, the first thing I always kind of even meditate on is this thing that I call TVC. And I came up with that because I need authors to know that I will never disrespect their work, intentionally anyways. I've never been told that I have. And TVC for me is the author's tone, the author's voice, the author's content. I do not come in to rip work apart ever. I will never do that. I try to just elevate the messaging using the client's tone, voice, and content. So I have to say that was important to me.
Well, actually, if I go up into, I have a comment up here from Shada, who says, Shari, you're all heart and it comes out in your editing.
Oh,
and it's so true. And I know that the clients that I've paired you with, you know, I try to always pair you with, well, the type of books that come and find me seem to always be in alignment with who you are. But there have been a couple, like, for example, Deirdre. We just launched Deirdre's book, Living Nightmare. It just launched, became an international bestseller on Amazon. So congratulations to Deirdre, brand new author. And Deirdre's book was, her content, her book was a genre that was not one of Shari's. So I'm not going to pair an author with an editor that has really no desire for that genre of book. It wouldn't make any sense for anybody, right? So I have another editor that I use for specifically that kind of genre of book. But that to say, I mean, Shari, you do so many in the nonfiction, but they're always aligned, right? We always find that, you know, you'll read through a story, give it a once over, read it through, and get really excited about this project and this kind of journey you're about to embark on with we get really excited for authors, I have to say, after we've paired everybody up and Shari and I say, oh my gosh, what a terrific book. This is going to be a wonderful experience.
Yeah. I love the fact that at least with my Pathways relationship with you is you already know when you come to me, not like it's a medical journal and that's just like no, too much compliance there, not for you. Right. And I love that you already know where I excel and where I'm weak.
Well, it's really what you love. You know, I want to do what you love. We're all here to be of service to our clients, but we're not of service to anybody if we're doing something that is not, but somebody else will love that genre. So I want them to do something that works for everybody that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Right?
So when I create a proposal for a client, for example, and they come to me with manuscripts in different levels of development, okay? Some of them are really at the beginning stages where I wouldn't even consider it a first draft. So editor, not involved yet. Manuscript, we need to focus on completing it. So when I've assessed that a manuscript is complete, it means that, you know, we've gone through every section of that. I have not read it through to architect it and move it, but I know, and I'm confident that the manuscript is complete. There's no left out. If there's a reference section, it's complete. If there's a dedication, it's complete. I was just talking to Linda Green about forwards today. You know, forwards sometimes take a little while to bring in. So I'll send it off even if the forward isn't complete. But usually, if you're bringing in somebody of esteem, they will send you a forward that is proofread and that has been edited anyway. So by the time you get an edit, sometimes they require a basic edit. So why don't we just kind of go through the different levels of, you receive manuscript, what's the very first thing that you look for when you see a manuscript?
I like to know that it actually has beginning, middle, end, that it has some flow. So I right away look for its structure. I like to see that, you know, whatever journey the author is taking their reader on, it's pretty clear. And flow is a huge word that I use. It has to flow. It has to read with like kind of rhythm, and yeah. So that's the first thing I look for. Then I'll go a little deeper and I'll look for either holes or repetition or writing style. I'll look at voice. And then I will then decide, I will look at it and see how much of me does it need.
Right.
Does it need more structure? Does it need me to actually make changes? Like sometimes the document is in such fine order that I just suggest some changes and they're quick and easy. It's 1, 2, 3 back and forth and we're done. Sometimes an author might need a little more push or help in their expression of what they're saying. And I like to try to help a reader like I will read a manuscript from the point of view of the professional, like I just said, looking for structure, its development, its tone, its flow, if anything is missing. But then I like to read it. I like to be the reader. I will go through it again and I will read it without any critique, without looking for anything. How am I enjoying the book? What would I need this author to do to keep me in the book? And that's where I might suggest high-level changes, if needed. But I look for that.
I know that in some of the cases that we've worked on, I mean, point of view is it's a common kind of flip, right? Where an author will write in the first person and somehow somewhere along the line, they're flipping over to third person, and the tense and the voice, the point of view shifts and changes. And that, I mean, that's a really important thing to catch. And if you're not, for example, having somebody who knows what to look for, when you're the author, it looks and reads perfectly fine to you. But what will happen is your reader will get it and they'll get lost, right? So you want to prevent that always from happening so that everything is consistent. Everything is like the flow of things. There has to be like a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? We have to know, like, where is this book? Where are you introducing us to what it is you want to teach us with this book? Let's get into the meat of all the teaching that you want to bring. And then how are we pulling all the ends together so that you feel like you've taken a journey, right? From beginning to end.
Absolutely. And then that's like the coherence factor. So really I'm reading with like 3 parts of my brain. And sometimes I do read a manuscript more than once because it requires me to just be that person who picked the book up off of Amazon because the title was interesting.
Yeah.
You know, and I have no idea what I'm walking into. And so I read from that point of view as well. But coherence is also a very important thing. Everything that you're saying, Carolyn, points to that. So the final read through is always, did we cover all the ground? The tenses are in place, the messaging.
Yeah.
You know, if someone has one urgent message that they want to share with the world. How are we presenting that throughout the course of the book? And are we going off track? Like
That's
sometimes we tend to, very often we might want to fill pages, or we might, want a thicker spine or whatever, and we might go off track or become very repetitive. And I'll be honest with you, I really don't like that. And I do look for that, because that doesn't help make a good book. So that's the professional part of me. And then there's the reader part of me. I want to enjoy the book. So,
well, what we do is we bring the manuscript to you with a certain word count. Okay. And then, we know that that's going to change. And because I have designer Steve on the line here, what, like a workaround for that. For example, if you want a 100-page book and your manuscript has just gone from 30,000 words down to 22,000 words, and you're under that 100, well, what do? We make the dimension size smaller. We make the font size a little bigger, and we have a thicker book, right? With the same word count. Yeah. Like, there's lots of ways to
around
create
it.
The book that you want, even if your word count shifts in a dramatic way.
Yeah.
Right? We play a little fancy design work. Steve, master at it.
I mean, so far, Carolyn, with everyone that you have involved me with, we haven't gotten there, but it's happened. It just hasn't happened between us with any of your Pathways clients, but it does happen.
Yeah, sure, it happens. And sometimes they're the bigger manuscripts that, people come to me and they say, I have 106, well, I've had some large, like 180, 220,000 word novels, but generally, the nonfiction genre is not up there. We're looking at like between 30 and 50,000 or 30 and 60,000 words in there, where it really all depends on how deep their teaching is going into with this book. But what I always appreciate is from my end, from the publisher's end, I always have this feeling of, okay, I'm receiving this from a client. It's like, handle with care, right? So you take it really gently and you pass it over to you, plug you in with the client. I know that I can leave that process with the two of you, and then you create the first draft of the back and forth with the word editing process. So you go through it, they receive it, accept, reject, integrate, round two, and then that comes back, and then I pass this over to the design part of the program, and I leave those two in charge of it, and they create it. And Deirdre can tell you, we've been through this entire process, right from the editing through the cover design, interior design, pre-launch and launch, and voila, you have this magical book that comes out. Pazit as well has had hers published with us. So really, really important that first stage. And I can't impress upon anyone how much your book will. It's not that we're here to improve your book. We're here to help your voice shine just, a little brighter.
Exactly.
And it's a really important, work. So, so I have, one of the questions that I wanted to ask you, and we've kind of covered it, but tell us more about a healthy author-editor relationship. Like, how does that work for you? You're in that, you're engaged in this relationship.
I feel it mostly starts with, I feel like it mostly starts with me, because, and what I mean by that is, I'm working for you, I'm working for the client, and my job really is to respect the client's message and voice. That's my ultimate job. And so a healthy relationship would just require that we have non-judgment, commitment to the process, and respect for what I do, as in turn, I totally always respect the message that my client wants to get through. And I work with that.
Yeah.
So for me, that's really important. I guess it boils down to one word: alignment. And that's super important to me, which is why very often I actually refuse books, not because I'm refusing the client or the author, but the material just doesn't jive with me. So I can't I can't follow through on that commitment that I just talked about. So that's really important to me. I guess, you know, I have that kind of spiritual way of working where I like to really be in touch with that person and that message.
Well, it just
And
brings,
I will say also that when
it brings your
I
best
do,
self
and when
to work,
I, you know, some of my clients, like I currently am working, I'm ghostwriting a book currently for someone, and he's a 77-year-old man. And very often I'll say, could you please wait? Wait, I'm like being you. Like I actually become the person when I'm in flow. Not always, doesn't always, but that's the best work. And you all as writers know your best work comes when it just flows right through you. I can read that, by the way. I know when it's been a struggle, not always, but sometimes I can tell when an author is like pushing and struggling and trying really hard to make it meaty and the message really like high, big language, or when the process was just so smooth and easy and I could read that on the page.
Right.
Actually, I mean, it's a little freaky, but it's true. Right, so it's funny. I've seen the 77-year-old man.
So listen, I have a question here from Wanda, a really good question. How long from the editing to when it's published? 1 week, 1 month? So when I work with any author, I always assign a month to an editing process so that we have plenty of time. But Shari, typically we usually look at what, 3 weeks-ish?
For me to turn around a manuscript?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely under a month. It should be. My part in it shouldn't take longer than that. So I'd say 2 to 3 weeks. 2 to 3 weeks. It depends obviously on you know, the word count of the manuscript. If we're talking about 40,000 or we're talking about 140,000, exactly. Very different story. But an average manuscript at 40, 50,000 words, it's like 2 to 3 weeks because the process repeats itself. So you've got kind of a general overview. Then you have like round 1, then round 2. So that process takes time because don't forget, when you get that manuscript back after Shari's reviewed it and taken the time to go, because don't forget, she's reading it line by line. So as she goes through that, she's making her suggestions, she's making her comments, she's making her edits. That takes time. And then in turn, when you receive it back, it takes time for you now to go through each one of those edits and decide, yes, this is exactly what she's absolutely right. And listen, it's always your choice. But you have a professional looking at it, you could be guaranteed that her suggestions are probably pretty good ones, but you're still able to say, no, I really want it, I prefer it the way this sentence, I want it the way it is. So you can leave it the way it is. You just reject that one. So then that manuscript goes back again. And she goes through it a second time. So, you know, it takes, I always give it a month just so that I have plenty of time, but 3 weeks for sure. For sure. Okay. Deirdre says it might take a while. Yes. How many words was yours? How many tens of thousands of words was yours?
Ended up being 410 pages, but we increased the size of the book to decrease the size of pages. I can't remember.
Yours was like 180,000 words or something. Just a spectacular novel. Beautiful, beautiful work. So yes, Shiz is worth it though. It's definitely worth it. Yeah, so I want to just take the opportunity now to kind of open up the floor. We've given you a little bit of information, piqued your interest. I'm sure that you might have a question or two. And are we able to sit with Shari by back and forth? It's really the best way. You know, we do Zoom calls also, but really Shari she kind of works in it. You definitely connect. And then she sends it back to you because it's a whole process. So I'm just going to open it up. Does anyone want to kind of start the ball rolling with a question for Shari? Go ahead, Deirdre.
I'm curious what the most basic mistake a writer makes that you've noticed.
The most basic mistake?
Like in they mess up tense, or it's always they're missing a supporting element to the story to make it pass properly.
Okay, did you write a novel? You wrote fiction.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not my strength. So I'm probably not the best person to answer that question. I could answer it from a memoir / nonfiction point of view. And that would be a lot of disorganization. So, they're teaching, but they're not teaching in an organized way. So the structure, kind of like setting up the book, the bones of the book first, and then staying true to that.
That can work for a novel too. If the setup of the novel is not the same way.
Yeah, you have a storyboard, you have an arc.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay.
I'll tell you something though, when I read a book and the girl was wearing a red hat and then 2 chapters later she's in a blue hat, I catch that.
Yeah. Not easy to read books when you're an editor.
Yeah.
Okay, great question, Deirdre. Thank you. Anybody else? Wanda? Go ahead, Wanda.
Hi, thank you so much for this opportunity. I feel very honored tonight. Thank you. Shari, I have a question. Now, I'm Carolyn. Remember when we worked last year together, that full day?
Yep.
We really got a lot done. And I felt your energy, my energy, while you were in the office. And even though you were right on about the title of my book, and I thank you for that. I went home, I was all for it when I was there, and then I got scared. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And then I had to stop.
Yeah.
And then I decided not to be afraid anymore. But we got a lot done that day.
Yeah.
And my question is, Shari, is it possible to have it a full day with you? Because I feed on energy. So, and I can express better when it's face to face. And then you can write it as I'm expressing it. Because sometimes when we're back and forth, I mean, it's all up to how you do it. I don't want to tell you what to do, but for myself, it's like, some people have visual and they can work well visual, and some people are okay being in a group, and some people work alone. And I just felt that one time that I experienced with Carolyn, we got a lot done that day. And it was the beginning of my wings to fly, as you could say. And I just wanted to know if it's possible to have a sit down, like book a full day after it's, I don't know if it's even possible. My question is,
I venture to say I would talk to Carolyn,
okay,
or directly to you somehow to set something up through Carolyn to see, because I have no idea where you're at or what your book is about, and then perhaps we really could plan a day. But
it's a question
I prefer to take that offline.
Yeah, it's a question of timing. As far as like when you're editing, you're not necessarily sitting down for 7 hours straight.
Oh my God, no!
And editing a book, you see?
That would kill me.
Because I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's what I'm visualizing. Man, that girl's going to be at that book from 7 in the morning to 7 at night. She ain't going to the washroom. She's not eating. She's not sleeping. Oh God. Okay.
I don't believe it happens that way. So we can have this discussion, another day. But from my perspective, I'm thinking that Shari takes her time to kind of breathe in a little, work on it a little. In one day, it might be quite a monumental thing for both parties, because it's a pretty
intense.
Dedicated. Yeah.
I hear you.
Yeah, but I understand why, though, because it's very efficient and you get results. I understand.
Well, it's just I'm going back to what we had that one day, and I hold on to that. And then I went home and I had to finish my project, and I'm like, I really like being with you, Carolyn. It's just the energy. I felt the flow, and I felt safe, and I didn't feel alone, and you understood when I was explaining, and you're like finding the right words as I'm like, man, can we just not like have you there all the time and just, do you get what I'm trying to say?
It's a good day. The author labs are good, but the editing process
it's powerful. For me, it's powerful. Yeah. So, and I just thought maybe it was the same with the editing.
Go ahead.
What I might throw out there, though, is that if you have a book that comes to me through the Pathways organization, I would be very happy to talk with you so you can feel my energy. Amen. And then have an idea of who you're dealing with and who's getting into your book, you know.
Thank you. Well said. That is exactly what I'm looking for. And I believe
I hear that, and I respect that wholly, and for sure we could spend some time together.
If we were sitting together, and I'm just saying, let's say for an example, I'm on the side of the pond and I'm just looking up at the sky, you probably could feel what I'm trying to say and add the actual for the reader to understand. So, and that energy flows, and then as we're writing it, then we can reach to someone's soul, and that's my goal, is to get to the soul of the people so that they can feel it, and then they can, it's like paying it forward, I want to reach to each one to help to help them.
That's nice. Well, I would never want to interfere with that creative process.
Okay, who had a question? I think Kim had her hand up there. Hey, Kim. Oh, hang on a second. I'm going to unmute you. Do you want to unmute yourself at that end? There we go. That's better. Go ahead.
First, Carolyn, I'm really looking forward to working with you. That's on my project before the fall. Okay. I've got my calendar going. And that being said, I love your energy, Shari. And I'm like, I hope that you're in the genre that I'm in. And I want to speak a little bit to Wanda, because I want to make sure I have some experience from a business perspective in proofreading. And I'm looking forward to brainstorming with Carolyn at different stages. So that one day, that other day after, and that other day. And I'm really looking forward to, from a perspective of proofreading, I was taught in real estate, because we would have 50-page leases to proofread, and it went through 3 stages. So the first person that created, okay, Carolyn. Second person that proofread it with some information, okay, which is not like books, but still. And the third person that had absolutely no information, so that when they got it, they were fresh, raw, and they read it for the first time with no influence. And and then after have that 1 hour. But I really want to say that from a brain, like there's different processes is what I'm hearing, and it's pretty exciting stuff that you're doing. Shari, thank you.
Yeah, it evolves from beginning to end. I mean, the manuscript that comes in to me is not the manuscript that gets released, as a gift. There's a whole process.
Yeah, and Shari, when you read for the first time, like when I finished with Carolyn, that could be 10 sessions before it's done and it's ready to go to you. Will you have no information and just read it for the first time fresh, or how does that work when it comes to a book?
Well, usually, she has an idea. Shari will have an idea through me of who you are, what you're writing about, what your goal is for the book, who the book serves. Okay, what is your vision for your book? Okay, she has all that information, and then the two of you are going to have a conversation. So the two of you can get acquainted. Okay, that part's really important. That doesn't always happen with editors. It's like the editor, you don't know who it is, you know their bio, but you don't actually connect with them as a human being. The energy part is really important, right?
So the energy never comes through the book then. If they've never talked, the person editing it, if there is no connection, the energy never really does come through the words of the book. I would think that you need to do that. Can
I share an example of how what Carolyn just said does not work? When I get like so incensed by editors who live across the world, never get to know their authors at all. All they get is a bunch of words in a document, and they just do a lot of this to the pages and send it back. It actually makes me very upset that there are authors that have to go through that process without any of that human interaction, that human understanding, and that connection. And here's why. Perfect example, if I may share, Carolyn.
Absolutely.
I had a potential new client who came to me after having worked with that type of editor. that I just described. And then she gave me what he did. She didn't show me what he did. She gave me the same parts that she had given to him to me and said, what would you do with this? Okay. So here's the difference. He just made a few very perfunctory kind of changes and sent it off to her. And when I read her document, I realized that either A, this editor did not know or care about what he was doing, or B, he never actually read the article, that chapter that he didn't read it, because there is she's saying one thing, she's contradicting herself. Her whole chapter is a contradiction that wasn't supposed to be. So when I went back to this author and I said, whoa, I need to tell you that what you wrote here, you're giving an example A and example B. You're saying A is great and B is bad, but you're making B look so good that you're trying to sell me on A, but I want B. I said, so your readers have no clue where you're trying to take them.
Yeah.
And
that reminds me exactly of the difference between proofreading and editing. So
yes, there you go.
I'm glad to hear that it's not,
exactly.
I'm trying to get, because, one's just proofreading, making sure there's no typos and there's no, and exactly. I think there's a lot of editors out there proofreading.
Well, that's why the question really bothers me. I've really seen it on Facebook a lot. I've been tagged in those questions. Hey, anyone know an editor? And I get tagged, and that's fine. And I meet the potential author, but they don't know what they need or want. And I actually don't proofread. I can't. I don't do any proofreading at all.
So we send manuscripts for proofread after they've been edited.
Yeah. That's fabulous.
So first of all, any manuscript that comes through us must have at least been proofread by the author. And trust me, that doesn't always happen. They need to be spell checked by the author. That doesn't happen. So if I get them and they're like none of those things have happened yet, then they must happen before they come to Shari. Why? Because why would I ask Shari to spend all that extra time for you to invest in that when you can just bring it in a really respectful way to your editor? As the author, it's pride, right? You're proud of your work. So the first person who's ever going to read it after you've written it is your editor. So put that best foot forward and get used to doing that, because as an author, that's going to be part of your work. You need to step into the role of being an author. So that means stepping up. That means elevating the way you may have done things before. So when you bring this piece of art to your editor, you want to be really proud of it. Yes, she's going to architect it maybe. Maybe she's going to shift some things around. She's certainly going to make some really fine-tuned adjustments that you're going to be really grateful for at the end. But when you bring it with intention and with respect and love. It's really important. So if I get it and I know that it hasn't had any kind of like author attention, I just gently send it back. And I say, hey, would you mind giving me just a little bit more attention on the proofreading, and just to give it a really good spell check, read it over a few more times, and then send it back.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Anybody else have a question? Linda Green. Yes, please, Linda Green.
Great discussion so far, and I'm getting a lot out of it. I'm curious on the editing. So you end up with the text, and you go through it the first time, and you offer up some recommendations back to the author. Do you wait for that work to get done before you go through it a second time, or is there an overlap? You're going through it a second time looking for that second piece that you talked about where you read it as a reader, and you're doing that while you're waiting for any corrections that get done. It's like, how does that all overlap? So does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes total sense, because there's two actual full rounds. So to answer your question, the first round, she goes through all of her corrections and sends it back to you. Then you take all of those corrections and you go through them and decide, right, Shari? Maybe just explain the accept or reject thing as far as the word editing process goes, because a lot of people aren't familiar with that actual process on Word.
Okay, so for a well-developed, really cared for manuscript, I go line by line and I will suggest changes in the right side column using the word comment, the word, what's it called? The review. So I will suggest changes or make changes and we can track them. So if I use my tracker, when the document goes back to you, Linda, for example, then you will see a marker that will allow you to either accept or reject my change or suggestion.
Okay.
And that keeps it really, really easy. So that's one way to work. On a manuscript that might need a little more finessing, or even like, you know, very often the book itself is fantastic, but I might come across, let's say, a short paragraph that I just feel like could send the message much more clearly in a more succinct way. So I might actually put on that document, I will put a strike through that particular paragraph, and in a second color, I'll rewrite it. And then the client, like if you see something like that, I'll tell you, okay, the red font is me rewriting your work. And you get to decide if you like what I've done, you keep it and you get rid of the strike through.
Okay.
That's another way that I really like to work that way, actually.
Yeah, and so it goes back to Shari. So she does that process, you get it, and she will explain to you some of the things. Like by the time she's done, maybe she's got some comments in the right-hand side. So she'll say to you, like she'll prepare you for what is coming your way, because that is part of the process, right, Shari? When you get the first edit back, you're mostly unprepared for what you see, and it looks a lot worse than it is.
Yes.
Right? Because you see straight.
Yeah, that's good warning, Carolyn. Very good warning. Yes.
Yeah, so we
it looks scary, but it's not.
Don't freak out. It's not as bad as it looks. But when you start seeing, because when you work in a document, two people in a word editing document, you've got two colors. So we can see Shari and we can see Linda.
Yeah.
So we see that Shari's done this and this, and you go from page to page. And sometimes, you know, because there's all these indications in Word, sometimes it looks like it's a lot, but it's sometimes just a word here and a word there and a sentence here and a reconstruct of that. So once you've gone through now this entire document, that's called round one. Okay, so she doesn't touch it until you've completely reviewed and now created version 2 of your document. So you've accepted some things, and as soon as you click accept, that paragraph converts to what she suggested and replaces what was there. Okay, if you reject, then the strike through disappears and the word that you had stays there.
Okay.
Okay, so round one, then you create version 2 of the document, and we do that one more time. Goes back to her. Now she's reading it from a bit of a different perspective. Now she's reading it from, okay, all those things I just suggested are now there. Whoa, that reads better. That feels better. There's still a little something here. We're going to have to maybe address this. I didn't see it before because of all the other things I was moving around. So then we do that process again. So that's 2 entire edits. And let me tell you, that's a lot of attention to every word you've written. There's a lot of love going into that. Right, Shari? I know that you bring that to your work, and it's so important for authors to know that, because it's a two-way street, right? You're both co-creating a finished work of art.
Yeah, I mean, once I'm given a manuscript to work on, I don't skim lines.
Yeah, Shari's very generous with her time. That's for sure. Thank you, Linda. It's a great question, because these are things that people aren't aware. And Linda, meet Shari, because Linda's manuscript is almost done. So we'll have a private chat another day. Very good. Thanks, Linda, so much. I have a question here from Steve, who's Pathways Steve, Chap Steve, who's sick with a pretty bad cold, so he doesn't want to start coughing. Does Shari automatically check for double spaces or more? Is it the author's responsibility to correct all those, like maybe there's spacing in between words? And I know why he's asking, because when he gets it, he wants to know whether are all those things corrected, or am I, as I do the interior design, still responsible to do that?
Oh, that's a really good question, Steve. And you're not going to like my answer.
Uh-oh.
Although, I could work with you as a team member and pay attention to that and just kind of add that to the list of where my brain needs to go. I sometimes do fix it and I sometimes don't, but I cannot, I have yet to be able to guarantee that the spacing was taken care of by me. I really think a proofreader should add that to their task as the final clean up read through, because my brain is deep into content, flow, repetitiveness, storytelling. And even when I read through it the second time, my eye goes, and again, we're talking about usually 30,000 plus words. My eye goes to every single word to make sure that there are no strike throughs left. There's no different colored font left. And that all the changes have been made and correctly so. So no.
Yeah, so it's actually a very good answer to a very good question. And I think as we move forward into the bigger evolution of what we're doing today, the proofreading person is going to have to be a standard operating procedure.
For formatting and stuff, yeah. Or we can discuss that and see how we can add that to one. Yeah.
Because it's important. Why? Because when we get to the stage of developing the interior of the book, then he's got the parts that are important for him to make sure that are included. And then when you get to the very end and you've got the final product, all of a sudden you say, oh my gosh, like he's got to go through the whole manuscript and check. And that's like a lot of pages to be checking for spacing. So that should be done. I think we're going to have to make sure all of that's done in the final proofread after your work, Shari.
Yeah. I just want to add, I'm so interested that Steve asked that question, because my mind goes back to manuscripts where there has been single, double, and 1.5 spacing. And I did send it back that way. I know I did. So, that's something we should, Yeah,
listen, we just keep adding things that we know are necessary, because the whole name of the game is a quality product. That's what we want. Quality inside, quality outside. You've brought a magnificent piece of work through your creation, whether it's a business book or a book about a subject that's dear to you, a personal story, a memoir, a children's. It doesn't matter what the story is. It's your story. Your name's on it. It's going out into the world. It's a legacy with your name on it. Why? I see it all the time, and I see it in different groups that I pop in and out of, and I understand budget. Everybody understands budget. Sometimes my belief is that getting there the quickest and the most inexpensive way, i.e. quality lower than standard. Like, you want a standard price point. Everybody wants to be competitive, but at the same time, it's hard to compete with Fiverr, right? I don't want to compete with Fiverr, because I know that how many covers do we get that were done by somebody for $5 on Fiverr that we have to now charge to correct. It's not worth your book and what you're putting out there in the world to say, okay, I'm going to do this with the least qualified people who are maybe going to put something good together, but in the end, your book won't be quality. And that's what you want. If you don't want that, then there's plenty of places to do that, but you want a quality book because you brought to the book a quality manuscript. So
I need to add to that.
Yep.
because what's really important here is that sometimes you do pay more to get it done right. And if it's not done right, you have people who are making sure that it does get done right. And oh my God, the Fiverr experience could drive you crazy. You could be going back and forth a million times in and out of a cover design or a formatting. Forget it. That's so technical. That's formatting is just so important that you make sure you have the right person taking care of that, because it could be really a long, messy procedure because it's very technical. But yeah, it's really important that you have someone that, you know, if something goes wrong, they have your back and they're going to get it right. And you know that you can do that with a Fiverr, for example.
Well, I was just looking at Linda Green was commenting. I use Canva all the time, by the way. I use Canva all the time. I create all sorts of wonderful things with Canva. And there's absolutely nothing the matter with creating a mock cover. If you want to have something to look at and you want to do that in the meantime, by all means, there's plenty of templates that you can use for fun and you can play on Canva. But when it comes to doing a cover, for example, we'll do another call on actually the graphic design part of your book, which is, you know, your cover spread, front cover, back cover, spine. There is a way to do that, and there's a way not to do that. So when you get to just having like a visual, that's fantastic. When you get into actually technically designing this, you want to have somebody who's qualified to do it. You want somebody who knows what they're doing. Like if you're going to do renovations on your house, you're going to hire somebody who knows what they're doing. Why would you do it any other way? So editing is like, that's the first stop on your way to getting your book through that whole process. And I know that, I mean, Shari's just so terrific at it. I wanted to ask Richard. Richard's on the line on the call, and I know that he was talking editing with me. Did you have any question at all, Richard?
Not right now. I'm just trying to get it all in.
Okay, because I know you were working on a book and you were kind of at an editing stage, I believe.
Well, the first book I did it myself with an editor.
Yeah.
Melinda St. Pierre. She was quite like Shari. She had a lot of the same things.
Yeah.
But still, in the end, there was a few things that someone who read the finished product did find a few things. At first, I was worried about that. But I was wondering, is there a certain percentage that sometimes gets by? Because really, it might have been 2% or 3% of the book in all, but they were edits that this second person found in key areas.
Yeah. Well, were they issues with content, or were they proofreading? Because I do want to say one thing. Every editor is a different person with a different style, with a different focus, and a different energy that goes into the work. So it is very possible that, like, I just told a story of one editor versus me and how we went into the work and saw very different things. So that's one thing to keep in mind. It is important that you trust that, you know, you feel that your editor is going to really take care of every detail of your book. But again, the question, was it typos or was it actually something?
There were some typos which I eventually took responsibility for, because it was up to me too. And it was spell checked, and it was checked, and it was read over by me, and all those little spaces that Linda was talking about was taken care of. But there was one area of content, because you're reading your own work, and you can't always, you have to give it up at one point.
Yep.
And
It's hard.
And it was content. People who read the book never referred to it, but I know.
You know it's there.
That's the worst. I got to tell you, I know what that's like, because I wrote a book for my MIB networking group, and I had 90% of my heart in it. And that 10% where just I wasn't feeling the book, it shows up on paper somehow. Yeah. It does.
You know, there is a percentage, it does happen, where despite all efforts, because don't forget there's many reviews, okay? So we all feel that by the time we've done this as many times as we have, and as many sets of eyes that have been on this have, so you're talking about author eyes, well, forget that, right? It's got to go through that first set of eyes that have never seen it. And through the editing process, Then, you know, it goes into interior design. You get the designed version of the book. You read it again. Maybe you pass it to a couple of friends to read it again. Maybe you're going to pick up a little something here or there. It should be very, very minor, but it happens. Then what we do anyway, when we get that designed book, the covers and the interiors uploaded to Amazon before, you know, everything is live, well, we order a proof copy, a physical proof copy, and make sure that you go through that version. So that's the one that's really where you may actually still find things, because there is so much that sets of eyes that read it. So maybe in that process, that's where I find, like I'll tell an author, take that physical copy with a red pen, and I want you to go through it as if you're reading it for the first time, give it to somebody else, always order more than one, and go through it. And then those come back to us. And that's the final version. So then Steve would take all of those little nitpicky, spacey, comma shouldn't be there. Oh my gosh, why is a semicolon there? Or why is that like there? And it should have come out or somebody. So that's the final. So you've seen it like 5 times now, and it's gone through. So there shouldn't be anything by the time it goes out there to be published. But I have to say, if you do find something, Richard, and you do want to change it, you just go back into your file in Kindle Direct, update it, republish it. Nobody will know. The newer version then will be ordered.
Yeah, I did that with the present book that's up there. Plus,
Okay.
I had all my my layout for the final copy, which was changed. And plus, my printer just ran out the second for the second book, the proof, and that was a good experience as well, because I went line for line over it, and I still feel it needs to be edited at a certain point. I'm confident in myself because the first book was all right, but this got a little deeper, a little more into attribution, heck of a lot more investigative.
Yeah. Well, you know, you evolved too as a writer, and from what you've learned, and I mean, you're a journalist, so I mean, you know that your second book is always going to be an improvement on your first one.
Well, it better be.
Yeah, but it still needs an editor. So
of course it does.
yeah, so that's I mean, that's just to be kind to yourself and make sure that, you know, somebody's got your back.
Well, there's 2 other books written after this already, so, you know, I gotta start.
Okay,
Third book has to be better than the
get
fourth.
the show on the road there, Richard. Let's go.
It sounds like you have a serial author on your hands here.
Yes.
Well, it's
Yeah.
3 books in the Denial series. First book was Stop the Denial, Case to Embrace Truth About Your Fitness. Second book is Still in Denial, The Reasons to Embrace the Truth About Your Fitness. The third one is Beyond Denial. There's no subtitle for that one. So.
Wow, nice.
So
Actually, the link for his book is in the chat if you want to see it.
yeah, I just put it
Wow.
up. Yeah, and and that was actually a suggestion for everyone here. That title was the editor suggested that after she read it. I had a different title before that. So as a journalist, you don't have to sell me on editing and editors. It's
Yeah,
just,
right,
you know,
exactly.
just that at one point I've done my own design, and getting it up on Amazon and mobile, Kindle, all that stuff I've been through.
Yeah.
So I had to do a lot of that. That's my next question.
You can. I mean, it is doable. We do it for people that just they have no desire to do any of that stuff on their own. They just want it handled, looked after.
Well, I don't want to do that anymore. That's the thing.
Well, okay.
I did all that. I mean,
Yeah,
the difference between my time
exactly.
and what I got out for is invaluable. So that's the whole.
That's such a hard thing for us to learn, is to do what we do best, what we like to do, and to just hand over the stuff that makes us crazy and eats up our time and our energy.
My gal calls it you go and work in your zone of genius, and then let me do the rest.
Yeah.
Right, and that's where we're best served. That's what we're called to do, what we do, and then the administrative parts and the small picky details that we know we're fully capable of doing. But listen, I have other things that my time is best served to do. So let's pass these details off to somebody who can just handle it, and I just know it's done.
Yeah.
I don't want to do it anymore. I'm tired of it, and I'd rather
There
write.
you go.
Exactly. So there you go. Well,
There
we'll have a
you go.
conversation one of these fine days, Richard.
I was supposed to send you a synopsis, wasn't I, last week? Never got to it. Never got to it.
That's okay. When you're ready, you know where I am.
Too much to do.
I know. Okay, so that's great. So does anyone else have anything before I wrap up?
I want to just say I'm really happy to meet Steve because I heard so much about him.
Oh yes, he's wonderful.
So I'm just so happy to meet you. I'm happy to meet everyone. Don't
Yes.
get me wrong, but somehow Steve's name just preceded and preceded and preceded him. So nice to meet you all.
Do you want to say a quick hello, Steve? Would you want to whisper it?
Hello, I'm very croaky at the moment. It's shocking. Anyway, very good to meet everybody. I'm sorry that it's just caught up with me, this wretched cough and cold.
Yeah.
That's
But
okay. You
it's
get your
been a
rest.
really interesting time. Really
Yeah.
interesting to hear.
Are you in Montreal, Steve?
Yeah,
We're in
just north. Hudson, yeah. Hudson. Turn me off.
Yeah, he sounds
I'm going to mute him now. I've been working with Steve since 2004. Okay, he and his partner have been my design team all these years. I have never seen him sick, other than a little cough from theater and this and that. So he jumped on the call today. I appreciate you.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here. Yeah, go and get some rest now. I'll see you are you in the office tomorrow? No, I'll see you Friday. Okay. We're all under one roof now, the whole team, which is really exciting. So we kind of love that. Kind of cool. Okay, Shari, what can I tell you? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all for jumping on board. And I'm really happy to meet everybody. And I wish you all an easy, fun, fantastic journey with whatever you're writing forward.
Yeah, and thank you. This is like really great wisdom, really great information, and kind of breaking it down a little bit into bite-sized pieces. And I know that if anyone has any questions as far as the edit, whether you're editing your book now, or it's something that you just have questions about for down the line, certainly get in touch with me, and I'll put you in touch with Shari. She'd be happy to answer any of your questions. So not to worry, that's all entirely
Definitely.
Okay, so
Definitely.
I'm going to call it a night. Thank you again, everybody. Thanks for investing your time this evening, and you will get the replay if you care to look at it and watch it, and join us again, same time, same station next
I
week.
got a wife I got to see somewhere down there.
Okay, okay, thanks everybody. Good night.
Night.